In a place where survival rules above all else, nature witnessed something no one had ever recorded before. It all began on a quiet day with light snowfall. At the monitoring station, the team watched the drone feed. Nothing unusual at first. Snow-dusted pines stretched across the landscape, faint tracks of wild animals disappeared into the forest, and the soft hum of the drone buzzed through the wintry stillness. Then an image appeared that brought the entire control room to a halt. As the drone passed over a clearing along the mountainside, there it was, a full-grown grizzly bear sitting motionless in the snow. Its thick, dark fur stood out starkly against the white landscape. Muscular and imposing, the bear bore a deep scar trailing from its right shoulder down across its chest, a mark that only added to its striking presence. But that wasn't what left the team speechless. Nestled close to the bear's belly, almost hidden beneath its massive frame, was a fox pup. Not frightened, not trying to run. Curled up in sleep, its bushy tail wrapped tightly around its body, head resting gently against the bear's fur, as if it had found warmth and safety there. Ranger Sophie, who was overseeing the drone's path, frowned and immediately rewound the footage. She quietly checked for glitches or signal errors. Nothing. The image was crystal clear and stable. A grizzly bear, lying still and letting a fox pup sleep by its side. In over 20 years at the Jasper Wildlife Conservation Center, Dr. Noah Finn, the lead researcher, had never seen anything like it. Grizzlies are solitary by nature, especially males. They don't raise cubs, they don't protect the weak, and they certainly don't tolerate the company of a small predator like a fox. By instinct, a bear could swat a fox to death or eat it without hesitation. But clearly, that wasn't the case here. In the days that followed, the drone was reprogrammed to track the bear's movements. The team reached a unanimous decision. Observe only, no interference. They named the bear Kodiak, after the famously strong and massive bear species. The fox pup they called Rusty, for his scruffy, reddish coat, dulled like rusted metal. On the third day, the footage showed Kodiak making his way along the mountain slope, leaving deep prints in the snow. Just behind, Rusty trotted in his path, his tiny steps barely registering beside the bear's heavy trail. He never strayed more than a few feet away, constantly glancing up to keep pace with the lumbering giant ahead. In another clip filmed early one morning, Kodiak clawed a frozen fish from beneath the ice. After eating his share, he paused, unlike typical bears who discard leftovers. This time, he gently nudged the remaining piece toward Rusty, then turned away without a single threatening gesture. Rusty approached cautiously, lowered his head, and nibbled at the fish in silence. Dr. Noah watched the footage again, deep in thought. Then he said, "This isn't predation, it's not even tolerance. This is provision." Rusty never fled, and that mattered. In the wild, a fox pup would never willingly approach a large predator. But Rusty didn't just tolerate Kodiak, he sought him out. When Kodiak stopped, Rusty stopped. When the bear ducked into a hollow tree, Rusty followed, curling up beside him to rest. From her monitoring post, Sophie pointed out that Rusty showed no signs of stress. No flinching, no nervous fidgeting. In the animal world, behavioral calm is a clear indicator of trust. As for Kodiak, an old bear, no longer in his prime, he still had the strength to brush the fox away or avoid him entirely. But he didn't. Every movement he made was measured, intentional. When Rusty came close, Kodiak stayed still. When Rusty slept beside him, he didn't shift, and when he shared food, he even stepped back to give the fox easier access. While watching a clip of the bear shielding Rusty from falling snow one cold night, Sophie whispered something almost to herself. This isn't the instinct of a predator. This is a choice. No one dared to jump to conclusions, but a bigger question was starting to form. Was Kodiak simply tolerating Rusty's presence, or had he truly chosen companionship? Could it be that, after losing his place in the hierarchy, exiled from his kind, this old bear had found new purpose? Not through dominance, but by protecting something smaller, more fragile? The answer remains unclear. But the footage doesn't lie. And just when the team thought this incredible bond was the peak of the story, the unexpected happened. Something that would challenge everything we thought we knew about natural predators. On day 21, the drone picked up unusual movement near the northern edge of the monitoring zone. Ranger Sophie spotted the tracks first. 5 sets moving in parallel, the classic pattern of a hunting pack. Snow gusts carved out by swift motion revealed the unmistakable signs. Wolves. 5 lean figures came into view, moving in a fanned-out formation, each about 10 feet apart, the standard spacing for a coordinated ambush. From above, they drifted across the snow like living shadows, silent, deliberate, and chillingly calm. Dr. Noah immediately ordered an expanded surveillance sweep. The drone followed the wind's direction. Through the dense forest canopy, shadows slipped between the trees. The wolves were closing in, moving straight toward Kodiak and Rusty. The research team could do nothing but watch. Conservation laws forbade interference unless there was a direct threat to humans. In the wild, nature runs its course. People are only witnesses. At that moment, Kodiak and Rusty were near the edge of the forest, beside a shallow, frozen lake. The drone, freshly recharged, was rerouted. From 130 feet up, the thermal camera showed them clearly. Rusty curled up by Kodiak's shoulder, sound asleep. The old bear lay still, likely in a light semi-hibernation, not in full sleep due to age and lingering injuries. The drone switched to grayscale night vision. Wind gusts swept across the thin snow cover, jostling the camera slightly. Then, at the edge of the frame, a shadow moved, the first wolf. It didn't charge. That was what made the scene so unnerving. No rushing, no lunging. Every step was careful, precise, part of a textbook flanking maneuver. 2 wolves veered left, 2 circled right. The 5th, largest one, held the center, likely the alpha. One by one, the wolves crouched low, weight shifted forward, eyes glowing in the infrared, locked, steady, unblinking. Their target was in range. From the drone's high vantage point, it was clear Rusty, just feet from Kodiak, was now within a tightening ring. The fox hadn't sensed it yet. Small and easily overpowered, he could be dragged off in minutes if the wolves made their move. But what truly unsettled the team was the silence. The wolves didn't attack. They widened their formation like chess masters mid-game. Every few steps, they paused, watching, calculating. Kodiak still hadn't stirred, lying on his side, unaware of the growing threat. Rusty was the perfect target. Alone, vulnerable, defenseless. Kodiak, old, injured, and at rest, wasn't much of a deterrent. For the wolves, this was a low-risk hunt. Inside the control room, Sophie gripped her chair, eyes locked on the screen. Dr. Noah said nothing, his gaze tracking each predator's movement. A quick emergency huddle followed, but the answer was clear. No intervention allowed, not for a potential threat. Then, a faint sound. Rusty stirred. His ears twitched. He lifted his head. He couldn't see it yet, but he felt it. That instinct shared by all creatures that survive the wild. When the silence becomes too silent, Danger is near. Rusty glanced around, alert. That's when he saw it. A wolf emerging from behind a tree barely 50 feet away. In that instant, Kodiak surged to life. His massive body exploded upward like a boulder breaking free from a cliffside. He didn't run, he didn't back away. Instead, Kodiak stepped in front of Rusty, planting himself like a living wall. The first wolf crouched low. 3 others slipped into the drone's view. All 5 now fanned out, encircling their prey like archers surrounding a lone war horse. A low growl. Then one wolf lunged. Kodiak rose up on his hind legs, towering above the snow, and unleashed a roar so thunderous it shook the trees, and even the drone. The wolf's first strike missed. Kodiak's paw came down with terrifying force. Not a hit, but close enough to leave a deep gouge in the snow, a warning etched in ice. But the pack wasn't deterred. 2 wolves closed in from either side. The first fell back, waiting for another chance. Kodiak stood his ground. He shifted his weight, anchoring his paws deep in the snow. He didn't move from his post between Rusty and the threat. Suddenly, a flash of movement. A wolf had flanked him from behind. Its teeth sank into Kodiak's left shoulder. The bear roared in pain, spun violently, and swiped with such force that the 2 rear wolves had to leap back to avoid the blow. Blood hit the snow, dark red against blinding white. The drone caught it all in high resolution. Every strike, every dodge, every brutal second where Kodiak exposed his own flank to protect the small creature behind him. Rusty didn't run. He crouched behind a nearby tree, eyes wide, locked on his protector's every move. Sophie was already standing. Dr. Noah's knuckles turned white on the table's edge. Neither had ever seen a grizzly fight, not for food, not for dominance, but for someone else. Kodiak staggered, still bleeding. Then, in a sudden surge, he charged the nearest wolf. The 2 collided in a storm of snow, fur, and fury. The wolf shrieked, broke away, and bolted into the trees. The remaining wolves froze. Kodiak roared again, this time not as a warning. This was the final call, not defense, not fear. It was the cry of a creature who had chosen to stand against the laws of the food chain, because behind him was a life worth shielding. The last 3 wolves hesitated. Then, one by one, they faded into the forest. The entire confrontation lasted less than 3 minutes. But in that short span, everyone in the control room had been holding their breath. Kodiak collapsed into the snow. His breathing was heavy, ragged. Blood still trickled from his shoulder, slowly, steadily. Rusty crept from behind the tree, inching forward but stopping just short. He waited. Then Kodiak tilted his head. No growl, no roar, just a slow shift, opening a space between his front legs. Rusty stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, as if he too sensed that this moment was different. This wasn't about warmth anymore. This wasn't just shelter. For the first time, the bear couldn't protect himself. The little fox lowered his head and sniffed the wound. He stepped back, then moved forward again, this time without hesitation. Rusty extended his tongue and gently licked the dried blood around the bear's matted fur. Tentative, but steady. No one in the control room spoke. The screen was black and white, but the reflected light off the snow was enough to see clearly a tiny red fox tending to a wounded bear who had just fought to save him. Sophie leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the monitor. A technician stood up, turned away, and wiped their face. Dr. Noah remained silent for several minutes. He didn't have to say anything. What was happening on screen was beyond anything theory could explain. Rusty didn't leave. All night he curled up next to Kodiak's shoulder, right beside the wound, as if to keep it warm on purpose. Occasionally, he shifted positions, licking away fresh blood, then laying still again, careful not to jostle the bear. No one had taught him to do this. Foxes aren't known for nurturing behavior, not like wolves or seal mothers. But Rusty chose to stay, chose to care, whether by instinct or something deeper science hadn't named yet. When the wind swept through the forest canopy and cleared the snow from the ground, Rusty used his nose to push away what remained, not in search of food, but to clear space so Kodiak could breathe easier. The silence in the control room was no longer from shock or doubt. It had become something reverent, like standing in the presence of something sacred. The next morning, the drone resumed filming. Kodiak had managed to sit up, slowly, with effort. His shoulder was swollen but no longer bleeding. He took deep, deliberate breaths, testing his strength. Rusty was no longer curled at his side. He was dragging a small piece of fish from the frozen lake's edge. What came next surprised everyone. Rusty didn't eat it. He placed the fish beside Kodiak, then stepped back a few feet and sat down, waiting, eyes fixed on the bear. Kodiak turned his head. He looked at the offering, then at Rusty. His expression was unreadable, but unmistakably aware. The bear didn't snatch the fish like a starving animal. He lowered his head slowly, eating just enough to regain strength. No rush, no greed. Rusty then padded over, not to finish the leftovers, but to lie down again, this time resting his head near the wounded shoulder, just as he once nestled there for warmth. Only now it was to shield the one who had once shielded him. The whole team sat through the footage again, then again. A young researcher quietly left the room. She didn't say anything, just whispered, "I just need a moment." There was no music, no dramatic narration, only the wind brushing through icy branches and the image of a small fox resting his head on a tired bear's side, as if standing guard over a sleeping father. At last, Dr. Noah spoke, his voice calm, deliberate. "This isn't about survival anymore. This is reciprocity. Rusty knows, he remembers, and he's returning the care. We often assume animals act purely from instinct, not memory, not emotion. But Rusty's behavior shattered that belief. He didn't stay with Kodiak for protection alone. He chose to give back, in the only way he knew how. This was no longer predator and prey, not the strong guarding the weak, but two beings, wounded, lost, and somehow choosing to stay beside one another. From that morning on, Rusty's behavior changed completely. The drone recorded him foraging, not for himself, but bringing food back to Kodiak's resting spot. Each time he would drop the offering near the bear's side, then step back. Always the same, always gentle. Dr. Noah had a name for it, behavioral offering, a sign of loyalty, maybe even love. In the frozen wild, without language, without theory, without culture or training, a tiny animal had shown loyalty, gratitude, and a kind of pure affection. In a clip taken days later, as the snow began to thaw under a faint morning sun, Rusty was lying next to Kodiak again. This time, not for warmth. This time he rested his head on the bear's swollen shoulder, as if standing guard. It was the first recorded instance of a once vulnerable wild animal caring for the creature that had once protected it, not through reflex, but through deliberate, repeated, and meaningful action. When Kodiak's wound stopped healing and his breathing grew labored for hours at a time, Dr. Noah Finn finally made the call he'd delayed for days. "It's time. We have to intervene." The drone had documented over 30 days of continuous footage. But now, the research team could no longer stay on the sidelines. Not for data, but out of duty. The bear was fading, and Rusty, though still faithfully beside him, could do no more. The rapid response team from the Jasper Wildlife Conservation Center was deployed. They followed standard protocol, approach from a distance and administer a mild sedative to Kodiak, just enough to make him drowsy without causing panic. Strangely, Kodiak didn't resist. He turned his head slowly as they approached, but didn't try to flee. Rusty, at the first sound of human voices, backed away, then, unexpectedly, returned. He positioned himself between the bear and the rescue equipment. It wasn't an attack, but it was unmistakably protective. One team member crouched down, staying still to signal no threat. It took nearly 40 minutes for Rusty to fully retreat to Kodiak's side. By then, the bear had already drifted into sedation. The transport was cautious, almost silent. Inside the specialized vehicle, Rusty repeatedly pressed his nose to the metal partition separating him from Kodiak's compartment. One of the handlers noted. It was like he needed to make sure the bear was still breathing. At the Jasper Wildlife Center, Kodiak was immediately placed in intensive care. His treatment included wound cleaning, antibiotics, and direct nutritional fluids. The trouble began when they tried to move Rusty into a separate enclosure. Despite being a highly adaptive species, the little fox refused to eat or drink. He clawed at the doors, let out soft howls for hours, and never left the dividing wall that separated him from Kodiak's room. After 2 days, Dr. Noah made a decision that broke with all protocol. For the first time in the center's history, let's give them a shared enclosure. Supervised, but shared. The quarantine unit was quickly reconfigured. 2 creatures from entirely different corners of the wild would now share a single, controlled space, under 24/7 surveillance. When the door opened, Rusty rushed straight to Kodiak's side. The bear, still weak, slowly turned his head, and in a moment, captured on camera that moved the entire care team to tears, Rusty burrowed beneath the bear's chin and lay still. No fear, no hesitation. From that day on, Kodiak began to recover, steadily, day by day. He resumed eating, slept on schedule, and when allowed into a small outdoor pen, Rusty never left his side, trailing him like he did in the forest. Everything they had lived through in the wild repeated itself here, in this artificial setting. Nothing was lost. Over the next 3 months, winter slowly gave way. The snow melted bit by bit, and life inside the quarantine enclosure, shared by Kodiak and Rusty, became more than a case study in animal behavior. It became a living testament to the bonds that can form across species. A behavioral research team from the University of Alberta was invited to observe. In their final report, they noted, no signs of stress or territorial conflict were detected. Cortisol levels in fecal samples from both animals were surprisingly low. Mutual care behaviors were observed consistently in both directions. Rusty often dragged food closer to Kodiak. On cold nights, the bear would pull blankets over toward the fox's sleeping spot with his paw. Their attachment, physical, emotional, routine, defied explanation through instinct alone. Then, spring arrived. New green buds sprouted across the center. Rain replaced snow. The ice on the lake slowly receded. It was a pivotal time of year, when most rehabilitated animals, if healthy, are released back into the wild. Kodiak had made a near-complete recovery. The old scar didn't hinder him much. His gait was slower, but steady. Rusty, now grown, alert, and vibrant with a rich red coat, still followed a few paces behind the bear, as he always had. The question arose, could they be released together? At the same time, in the same place? After an internal meeting and thorough review of their behavioral records, the answer was clear. Yes, because separating them now would be against nature. Release day. The conservation team transported both animals to a protected area near Maline Lake. Rich in water, food sources, and safely outside any known bear territories. A drone launched quietly from a distance. No engine noise. No fencing. The gate opened. Kodiak stepped out first, slowly, each heavy paw sinking into the damp earth. Rusty followed, scanning the surroundings, then quickly trotted up behind him, tail flicking as he caught up. The drone hovered at 200 feet, filming silently from above. On the screen, a large bear walking toward the deep forest, and just behind him, a small red shadow, never more than a few steps away. No one needed to say anything. And so, in the heart of the Rockies, where winter is harshest and the wilderness most unforgiving, two creatures, once meant to have no place beside each other, chose to stay together. Not out of instinct, not out of need, but because of something deeper, something science has no name for. Maybe it was compassion. Maybe it was memory. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the simple, powerful choice to stay, when either one could have walked away. If you're watching this while looking out at your backyard, or maybe while gently stroking the old dog curled up beside your sofa, I just want to ask, have you ever witnessed a bond that transcends species, that rises above instinct, something like what Kodiak and Rusty shared? And if you believe that compassion is a language understood by all living beings, leave a comment below.